Dale Heffer, the CEO of the IMC conference, joins us to talk about building one of Africa's largest marketing conferences. In 2019, when they relaunched the conference, they welcomed 500 delegates. Recently, in 2025, they welcomed over 3,000 delegates coming through from 20 countries. They grew even during lockdown. When a lot of conferences weren't hosting, they were growing. So Dale joins us to talk about organizing communities, building communities of influence, collaborating with people, and how you build experiences that people don't just want to attend, but want to talk about. This is The Lead Creative. I'm your host, Mongezi Mtati. And today we're coming to you from Solemix Studios. Dale, thanks so much for joining us on The Lead Creative. I've been watching the Nedbank IMC conference grow in leaps and bounds since 2019.
Thanks, Mongezi. It's great to be here.
It's absolutely
As I was saying earlier,
awesome
to be with the Stephen Bartlett of marketing in South Africa. Thank you.
No, not even close. Not even close. So I know that you've done a lot of ultra marathons, from the Comrades to Oceans, right? And now, of course, you do this extreme sports of organizing marketers and building a community and building a business.
Ultra marathon, yes.
Ultra extreme marathon.
Extreme sport. You could get Red Bull on board.
Exactly, right. And I think there's are there any similarities, rather, in your view, between building a community and doing these ultra events?
Yeah, well, firstly, I was probably a bit sneaky including that on my credentials. It was about 100 years ago, but there you go. And it's the perfect metaphor. Obviously, it's fantastic. Those endurance sports, like us in marketing, require tenacity, persistence, building of, exactly as you say, community. If you're running along and you're battling and there happens to be a bunch of a bus in running terms ahead of you, you'll jump on, get the support. You're fully committed from beginning to end. And there's always, most importantly, there's the target, the goal at the end, which is one of my big things with marketing and business is goal setting. So no, a beautiful metaphor, in fact. Thank you.
When you acquired the IMC conference, which is now, of course, the Nedbank IMC, from Living Your Brand in 2018, excuse me, that was something that you saw in marketing at the time, or that was missing in marketing at the time.
Yes.
What is it that you saw at the time that remains similar today, and what has changed completely between then and now?
Excellent question. I saw the need for, funny enough, in terms of the Comrades chat, a community, a community type event where it's neutral. It's a neutral platform that everyone can get involved, including the associations, the bodies, all the different agencies, all the clients, including other banks. We're definitely not exclusive to any bank. And to build something where people can get on board just to grow the whole marketing conversation. I really saw the need for that particularly. And a couple of other things. I saw the need for a hard-hitting one-day event where there are no sales pitches. Yes. There's none of these 45-minute death by PowerPoint type presentations without sales pitches, where everyone's on board to share insights about the industry itself and how to better it. And then I also saw personally, it's always been a passion of mine with my youth in my previous career at Chillibush, is focusing on the youth. Yes. And so I decided I was really going to bring that to the fore. And so we immediately launched our bursaries. And you won't believe this, Mongezi, at our launch conference in 2019, we were cutting edge because we did a live stream on Facebook. Imagine, we're thinking pre-COVID here. Now it's like,
Yes.
But back then, just to get the youth on board, we did a free stream to those who couldn't afford on Facebook. And that just underpinned my commitment to help get the youngsters on board.
So you mentioned a couple of things, Dale, that are very interesting to me. The one is organizing people, organizing associations under one roof and kind of collaborating with them. And of course, the question of the youth. A lot of us would look at organizations as they stand and think putting these two organizations in one room is going to be difficult and complex, and yet you did it. What is it that you believe led to them coming around the table? Or do we overestimate how difficult that is.
I think we completely overestimated it. At our heart, we're all communicators. And I think that's the bottom line. Everyone really wants to communicate and talk benefits to the industries. And look, while there's obviously an industry benefit, there's obviously also benefits to each of those associations commercially, exposure-wise, and whatever else. So people who run those are business people too.
Yes.
But at our hearts, we are communicators, and this is the perfect opportunity for us all to get together. And we've really, around the conference, built a fantastic community from MASA to Gilly at the ACA to Pratesh to PRISA. And now we've even started incorporating some of the South African chambers of business because it's fantastic to grow our community into the business space too, which is what we always promote as marketing is business. That's one of our key philosophies. Yeah.
There's something else that I sometimes like to ask marketers and people who are seasoned in the industry. I mean, you mentioned the youth. So what we often see in work that goes out there, marketing, communication, advertising work, sometimes work can be out of touch. So you can tell that there are seasoned, matured marketers and communicators sitting in the room making the big decisions. And yet the younger people who aren't as seasoned in the industry have less experience. How do you bridge the gap between the seasoned and the inexperienced younger marketer to ensure that work resonates to both ends of the table?
Sadly, there's no alternative to inclusion. You've just got to include them now and grow them. And if I look back, we started doing this now, 7 years ago. These youngsters who we first brought on board then, the marketing students, the interns, the up-and-comings, they're now in really senior positions out there. And it's fantastic to see them grow. As I said, even in my previous incantation at Chillibush, we always had a very strong internship program. And I look at those guys now and I see that they're captains of industry. Guys like Muzi Zamema, who heads up media at Telkom, and Lebo Madiba, who's a powerhouse in PR, and to mention a couple. So the only way to do that is with inclusion, support, growth, and time. It's literally the only way. And that's really, at our last conference, we've even started including school children. I'm determined to get it from, I've got 17-year-old twins. And so I thought perfect opportunity to start getting them exposed. So their schools sent their business study students to the conference. And so now we've got, and as I mentioned to you earlier, we always have a youth component at the conference. And this year we've got a panel that includes Marco Stavro, who's a very well-respected youngster. But we are taking it one step further, and we've got a Gen Alpha on a panel who's 9. So we're really starting to look ahead and investing now, so they can start coming through. That's our mission, that's our plan, and personally the reward is just to see them cracking it in the industry. And the students are so wonderful, they're enthusiastic, they're committed. We do a lot of work with UJ, and on the day at our coming conference, we're going to have at least 50 of them there who are going to be playing a role in registration and supporting and back end and media. So it's lovely to see them getting I think that's what they need, is a commercial entry. And I think this handing over the baton, instead of talking about it, instead of talking about how it's done, trying something out, testing it, doing it successfully, and showing the industry how it can be done. Well, just to labor the point, there's a lovely young man who's at UJ. He's doing his master's in PR now. His name's Ibrahim. He contacted me on LinkedIn a while ago saying, you really need, he wants some commercial. I said, brilliant. I met him immediately, and he is now our media manager. He said he sent the message to 50 people. I was literally the only one who replied. So I think it's up to us, where possible, to help bring these guys in. Look, I'm fortunate. I've now got Ibrahim on my team.
This is true,
and it's working for both of us.
I think one of the things that comes up for me in that is access to the right kinds of people, access to Dale, access to somebody to whom you can send a message and they respond. Are we creating that kind of access in the market? Are these people whom we admire as marketers accessible to us? And I'm not necessarily suggesting that, everybody should make time all the time. They're busy people. They're there because they're doing really important work that's changing culture. But how much access can we create as marketers to people who are coming into the industry?
I'm sure we could do more, to be honest. I don't know about what happens on the actual rock face in terms of, I know people like Pepe at Joe Public does a lot of work on that front, and I know what a lot of the individual agencies do. But as a groundswell, I think we need more public-facing initiatives. I know also the Creative Circle does a lot, the bookmark, there's a lot of initiatives, but I'm not sure about the actual face-to-face time that is happening out there. And perhaps there's an opportunity to formalize that. I think there always is, and it's something very much in the back of my mind, actually.
Yeah. Some of the things you mentioned about the conference to me talk about the experience that the experience that you are uncompromising about the experience and compromising about
that ultramarathon you were talking about.
Exactly, right. About the quality of the speakers that you get in there, which an ultramarathon parlance is fueling, right?
Exactly.
And that does a lot, of course, in making this experience what it is. And I mean, I've been on the other side quite a lot, where I've had a CEO or a senior to me or somebody in our company wanting to be a speaker at the IMC conference, and they were rejected, right? And I think you can sense the quality, the quality of people, the caliber of people, the level of people who are there.
Yes.
I also know how difficult it is to organize a community of people, let alone a community of people who are as busy as all of these marketers. Where was the turning point? What would you say was the turning point for you when you went from 500 delegates in 2019 to when you felt like things flipped and more quality speakers were saying yes, or even requesting to be on the IMC stage?
Well, firstly, we are ruthless in terms of our speakers. That is something we've done from the very beginning. We have to push back. In fact, we're running a waiting list for 2027 at the moment. But the turning point, I suppose there are a couple of things that stand out for me. Obviously, 2019 was fantastic, and I've got Nedbank to thank for that, because we had Kenzie's support as our naming partner, and the gravitas that came along with that, which has been incremental over the years. But after 2019, we went straight into COVID, so it was an interesting challenge. But when we came back live, so my thinking is from 2023, things really started happening, and my benchmark is I've got a couple of strange little guys. I suppose it's like, let's get to that 10K mark. And one of my 10K marks in my head was having a radio station doing an outside broadcast from the conference. To me, that was always, wow, that. And so I thought, no, man, I want it, but obviously I'm going to have to pay. So in 2023, I had to pay a radio station to be there. And to me, a turning point was in 2024 when I had to choose who would be the outside broadcaster at no charge. So I think that's when I realized, hang on, there's something magical happening here. 702 came on board. Last year we had SAFM. And this year, all things being equal, it'll be Metro. So we are really proud of that. And I think that's a real benchmark when I started realizing, hang on a sec, there's real value here. And then, just when we were back in person, just the caliber of our delegates. We would have, even last year when I was saying to someone the other day when I was at the conference and I'd at lunch, I'd walk through and it would be like bumping into marketing royalty. There'd be Mzamo, Masito, Kaya, Dlange there, obviously Kenzie and Andisa, and then you bump into Pepe, and it's just beautiful. And I think that's where the real value of the conferences has come in, is that it's appropriate to every level of every communicator in our industry, right from students to senior marketers bringing their entire teams. And that brings itself with it its own challenges of making the agenda just right. Because obviously it's got to be appropriate to everyone.
Of course, before the Nedbank IMC, you had built and sold Chillibush, and you had a firm grasp of building brands, building communities, and all of these things. How do you think that experience helped you to build this? Because from what Chillibush was to what the Nedbank IMC is today, of course, while they are different in their offering, there's the same level of quality, the same level of the same essence of building something really solid and massive. How do you think that experience?
Stop! Stop!
How do you think that that background helped you in building this?
Yeah, I think it was essential. And funny enough, when I talk about Chillibush, people think, oh, you always loved advertising and marketing. I didn't. I just always wanted to have my own business.
Yeah.
That's what inspired me. And very naively, back in the 90s, I thought, oh, let me start an ad agency. How difficult can that be as a business?
Yeah.
So I started, and I realized very quickly that it was real.
Yeah.
And so I think that always gave me a business mindset in both marketing and running the business, something that I've subsequently applied to absolutely everything I do. I mentioned earlier about the goals.
Yes.
I'm obsessed with goals and detail and training and preparation. I drive my team mad. I'm very hands-on. The devil's in the detail. But as an aside, when I bought the conference, I actually did it with two partners, two businessmen. And I realized very quickly that these guys had the total wrong perception of marketing. They thought it was a golf day, a bit of fun here and there. And so I kept on saying to them, guys, but marketing is business. Marketing is business. And that kind of stuck. And then I thought, hey, marketing is business. And so I've trademarked that term. And I own that term. And that kind of underpins a lot of our thinking when it comes to marketing. That it is a business. It's got to be run like a business. It's a marketing conference, but it's a business. And that's always served me well, is to think about everything I do as a proper business with real business imperatives and goals and outcomes.
There's a book that I read a long time ago titled The Business Brickyard by Howard Mann.
Okay.
One of the things he says is you define your business with a no. In as much as you define your business with what you do, you define your business with what you aren't, right?
Right.
And I know that the IMC conference isn't an expo. It's not, it didn't grow to become one of the conferences that started out around the same time as a conference that organized people that today are expos and exhibitions and with 100 exhibition stands 100%. In Sandton Convention Center or the Gallagher Estates.
Yes.
What is it? What are some of the decisions that you had to make to say, no, we are not that, we are this? And because I know that when you do that, you differentiate yourself in the market, but you also get backlash. You also get pushback, rather than backlash. What's some of the pushback that you got, and what are some of the decisions that you have to make every day to go, no, we are not that, we are this?
Yes, no, 100%. That's another excellent question. Thanks, Mongezi. I guess when I started the conference, I didn't really have a differentiator. You know, now we can say we're Africa's biggest marketing conference, but obviously back then we didn't have it. So I set up some distinctive values that I thought I'm going to base myself on these. The first one is I'm going to be a one-day conference. Because personally, I find that if I go to a conference that's spread over 3 days, it becomes listless. People pitch and then don't pitch when they want to, and there's always just blowout with those conferences. So I decided that's going to be one of my distinctive values. We're going to be one day. Secondly, we're going to be hard-hitting presentations, 15 minutes, no death by PowerPoint, no sales pitches, no sponsored speaks. So that was another one. And then the third one was exactly as you say, around an expo. We weren't going to have 1 million stands, tunnels of exhibition spaces. And so
3 lanyards.
We give a lot of that. So we have apparently I know we have a sensational goodie bag. So there's obviously things we pick and choose, but I've had to push back a lot over the years with people who firstly say, well, we'll sponsor you as long as we can speak. Some of the biggest corporations, and they just cannot believe it when I say, I'm sorry, we're not going to take your sponsorship and you can't speak because your story isn't interesting. And so that's probably been the biggest thing I've had to push back on. The second thing is just around the number of exhibitors. We call it. Once we've sold a certain amount, we call it. So we don't keep on growing and growing and growing, because I'm very cognizant of the fact that we've got short breaks. And there's only so much you can do in a break. So I'm not going to tell someone rubbish that, there'll be millions of people past their stand and so forth. That's not what we're about. We've been approached by companies to partner with them as the conference component of their trade show. And I said, no, in fact, I have a benchmark in my head, and that's, I picture some of the senior CMOs in our industry, and I think, could I see them walking around that trade show? No. And then that encourages me to push back.
I think that defining your audience or your community really well, I think is a really important one. So, I mean, there's somebody sitting out there who's building a podcast like myself, building a community, building a conference, and on the other end of the table or other end of their inbox, there's somebody saying, if you give me 30 seconds, I'll give you this amount of money. If you give me this space, I'll give you this money. And that sometimes takes you away from the course, from that kind of space.
Yes.
How do you get to this point of, even though it's hard, it's a hard slog, we have to stretch our rand as much as possible and still reject what doesn't take you down that journey that you're planning? How do you make those kinds of decisions?
Well, I think at heart, I like to think I'm a business person.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
I'm pretty ruthless about what the conference will get out of it too. For example, offering a person such as yourself to come and have a podcast there. Yes. I'll sell it to Mongesius. He's going to get all this exposure and what have you, which he will. But I know at the bottom, at the bottom of it all, I will get solid, credible exposure. Yeah. So it's basically just applying that filter. What works for us both? I try to be ruthlessly ethical, so I'm not going to mislead anyone in terms of what they will be getting at the conference. So I think it's just a case of putting on a business hat and assessing every opportunity as it comes up. And it's interesting to see how the conference has evolved. For example, this year I'm looking at creating you remember last year there were podcasters, there were lots of podcasters, and we ran a fantastic system where everyone gets walked through to be interviewed. But now I want to create a whole podcast center, with an umbrella brand that can, so it's all held together as a proper entity, and it's more formalized. So that would be separate from the radio, for example, the outside broadcasters and the MDDA stations that'll probably be there. Last year we had the TUT campus radio,
right.
And this year we'll be having more. So and that I love, because there you're uplifting a campus, and you're offering a youngster an opportunity, and you're starting to get your foot in at that door. So it's all a case of bells and not bells and whistles, seesaws and turnarounds, and seeing how the ecosystem works for everyone. It feels like a long waffle. Did that answer?
No,
Did that answer your
perfect
question?
Sense. Yeah, it makes perfect sense. I mean, I think for me, it's about being driven by the goal, as you said earlier, but also understanding who you're serving and being able to serve the people you're serving the right way, number one, but also seeing what you benefits as well.
Well, and I can cite an example that's happened very recently, actually, in the last 2 days. There's an association who we partner with, and we welcome them with open arms. But they've started saying, we want more. We want more exposure. We want to be seen more. We want an individual welcome. We want a speaker slot. And I've got to say, I've got a very careful ecosystem of associations and bodies who I'm trying to make fair for everyone. They all want to be part of the conversation. So it's just a case of regulating that. And at the same time, I've got to be commercially minded. I've got children to send to school.
Yeah, for sure.
Marketing is business.
Absolutely.
But it's all a case of realistic expectations both ways.
As a content creator, a marketer, an agency, it gets really difficult finding a place, a studio, where you can just come in, do the work, produce the work, and leave. That's why this episode of The Lead Creative is coming to you from Solemix Studios, where we just came in, set up. In fact, you didn't even have to set up. Actually, everything was taken care of, headache-free for us, which is the best thing when you are an agency, a marketer, or somebody creating content. So for all your audio, podcast, music, and post-production needs, check out solemixstudios.com. And hey, tell them you're coming from The Lead Creative, and they'll give you 30% off your first project at Solemix Studios. Now back to the conversation. We've been talking about how you've been organizing marketers, into your community for years, and how a lot of the time you are, at least a lot of us, aren't able to be in these rooms with all of these people at the same time, and the quality of people at the same time. In your view, what turns an audience who attend a conference, attend an event, into a community that wants to meet every year and feels the need to join? Because a lot of the time brands talk about communities, people talk about communities, but actually just have audiences, and you manage to build a community. Where's that turning point?
I think the turning point is making everyone want to be there for the day. And that's the fine balance of creating our agenda. And I got I'll give you an example last year. I don't know if you remember Welcome Witboy we had as one. He was a gangster, fantastic speaker, motivational speaker. He was a gangster made good. He was the CEO within the prison, but he decided to get out, and he's created a fantastic career. And I thought, I really want this guy. But of all our speakers, we got backlash because they said, why should we support crime? It's seen as though we're supporting crime. And I said, no ways, we're talking about a redemption story here.
Yes.
And so I stuck to my guns. And even though we've had some negative feedback on that, we've had remarkably positive feedback generally. And I think creating that tension and that excitement and that a bit of conversation, a bit of conflict is what works for us. And so we always try and bring in a little bit of controversy. So people will want to be there, and they're not just going to, it's not vanilla. As you know, the day is never vanilla.
No, absolutely not.
And it's one day, and it's on time. You know, Donovan Goliath is our MC, and I are ruthless on that front. So
I think you mentioned conflict, and I want to just double back on that, because there's a lot of, there are many things that make us different online, and you realize them very quickly in the conversations that are happening among people. I realize it all the time, and anybody who's online will see that we are so divided on so many issues, and sometimes brands, people, events trend for the wrong things. As a community builder, as a marketer, as an entrepreneur, how do you lean into conflicts in a healthy way that benefits and grows the community?
Yes. I guess it's a case of sticking to your guns. I went to talk with the wonderful Mzama Mazito recently, and he was, what Mzama's like. He said, we should never be dependent on earning money from anyone. I said, that's well and good if you're at your station of life, but everyone else on the planet needs to earn a buck. But you almost need to think like that. That am I compromising what I'm doing here for a buck? So I always like to apply that filter with a reality dose, and make sure I'm not compromising my values and conference values for an outcome that I don't know that I know in my gut isn't right. And then I think it's all about relevance, Mongezi. Everything is about working to stay relevant. And I know you interviewed Suhail recently. He's wonderful, and he's actually our global keynote. And he talks about relevance so beautifully. He says that when he went to Thailand, he had to forget everything he knew and start again for the cultural understanding. And I think that's almost something we all have to do in our businesses the whole time, is just make sure we are refreshed. Can I give you another example?
Absolutely, sure.
As a 60-year-old white woman in this industry, I've realized that I have to work hard to...
Once a day over 30.
Oh, you smooth-talking devil. When can I come back to your show? But thank you. So I realized that I have to work hard at trying to be relevant. And a typical example of this was, I thought, personally, I need to learn Zulu. So I'm terrible at it, but I've been plugging away for years. And shame the guys at VDE and everyone, they're all very patient with me, probably rolling their eyes. But I remember one time I was in a Checkers or a Woolies, and those ladies cleaning the floor. And they have their beautiful territory of freshly cleaned. And then you come to it and you look at them, your eyes meet across the mop. And you think,
am I going to walk on tiptoes? Or am I going to go around?
Exactly. Am I going to hurdle the bread counter or go around aisle 46 or walk through it? And so in this particular instance, we sort of met, our eyes met. There was nowhere for me to go. She was looking at me, and I said, "Ngiyexolisa." And she went, "Oh," and she went, opened it up like royalty for me. She said, "Come through, walk on my floor." And I just thought, wow, just that little act of trying to, and I probably pronounced it wrong and everything, but that was just to me a small indication of working to be relevant. And I think that's what we just have to all do all the time in our brands, in our business, and in our personal growth.
That's interesting, because brands tend to lose that. And I think this links back nicely to the conversation we were having a bit, or the earlier part of our conversation, about how you bring in people from different walks of life, different stations of life into a room together to create a piece of work. And I think it leads to that relevance, because when you have these, younger people in a room and more mature marketers in a room, it creates that relevance, especially if the both voices are heard. So I often wonder, when we talk about communities, especially for brands and with brands, when we talk about building communities and when we talk about organizing people, I often wonder if we get it right as marketers, because I don't know if someone who owns the same brand of sneakers, the same brand of jeans, attend the same event, go to the same restaurant, feel as though they are part of a community. What do marketers get right or get wrong about building communities or organizing people into communities?
Yes. Well, I would say, and if you've got any investment broker who's always trying to sell your policy, it's not a one-day game. Yeah. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. So I think that if you are superficially relevant, you're going to get bust very, very quickly. And a lot of people now with AI think, okay, well, they'll feed it into AI and it'll come out the other end and it'll be relevant. No, that's actually, if you feed an irrelevant idea into AI, it'll just be magnified on the other end. So I think building that trust and that relevance and that community is just around listening, but being firm to your own values. And if I'm in a room, I will love listening what the student has to say and what the CMO has to say.
Yeah.
And I have often, Marco Stavro, I'm sure you know Marco well. He's the Gen Z guy, and he's a prodigy in his understanding of the youth. He has given me so many insights about don't do that. It's not going to work. For both the seniors and the juniors. And I think you're absolutely right. So it's a case of listening, researching, going to conferences like ours, and that's not a punt. Although you can get tickets at www. Going to conferences like ours and learning and being mindful and listening to podcasts like yours. And I think ultimately, if you stick to those values and your principles, you'll build a brand that itself contributes to the community.
Dale, given Africa's many challenges that we are facing and the things that we have to resolve, how do you believe marketing can play a role in solving or being part of the solution to some of societal issues that we are facing?
I just wish that I think marketers are used to being considered the poor cousin. I mean, there's no getting away from it. If there's a C-suite, we are generally excluded or very rarely included, and I think that's a perception that has to be changed. So, there's that guy, Peter Drucker.
Yes.
Yeah, he's the one who said that a business has one purpose, and that's to get customers, which means it's got two functions, marketing and innovation.
Yeah.
So basically marketing is business or business is marketing. And I think that's the kind of credibility we have to start spreading from here all the way to Bloomin' Egypt.
Yeah.
And that's about being required as an integral part of any business, as a core need for any business. Yeah. Marketing has to sit firmly in the perception of the CEO, the CFO, and everyone else in the business. And that is the only way we're going to get credibility, is to get buy-in from the business owners, the leaders in Africa, the guys who are making things happen. As long as they see the need for marketing, then I think we're on our way. So that's the one side. And then secondly, I think it's about collaboration. We're really starting to make inroads into getting the other African marketers to come and be part of the conference. For example, we had 17 people from Malawi attend, from the Institute of Marketing in Malawi attend.
Yes.
And my word, they're learning from George Damson, who's the wonderful president of the IMM, Institute of Marketing Malawi. His passion and as a result, I ended up going to their conference and taking a keynote speaker, Sharon Keith.
Yeah.
And Mbali Bengu, who went and spoke at their conference. And so the sharing begins. And that is literally the only way we're going to do it. That and credibility, where we're seen as an essential business entity, I think is what's going to make it happen.
Yeah. There's a lot of talk about marketing effectiveness and that sometimes it's not we're not really being effective in marketing, or at least that marketing sometimes isn't effective. And as a result, we have leaned more into this sort of short-term thinking in marketing.
Yes.
In your view, what's the one of the biggest misconceptions about what makes marketing effective, or what makes marketing work? It's no secret that South Africa is one of the most unequal countries in the world, and that inequality shows itself most visibly in schools, especially in townships and rural areas. That's why, as the lead creative, we are proud to collaborate with Threads for Ikasi, a foundation whose cause is close to our hearts. They provide school uniforms, dignity packs, and other essential items to children in under-resourced communities, helping them go to school feeling confident, with pride and dignity. On this show, we talk about how creativity and brands shape the world. Threads for Ikasi does exactly that, shaping futures one child at a time. Because when a child walks into a classroom feeling confident, it changes everything. It changes how they view themselves, how they learn, and it transforms how they imagine what's possible. These are future leaders, future creatives, and future agents of change. To help them show up as their best selves, visit threadsforikasi.org and sponsor a child today. Let's help them where it matters most. Check the link in the description and sponsor a child. Enjoy the rest of this episode.
Do you mean why people don't think it works, or why people do think it works?
No, I think there are I think on both sides there might be misconceptions about why it works or why it doesn't work, or why it's effective or why it isn't effective.
I can tell you what CEOs and CFOs think. They think it's fluffy. They think you can't measure it. You can't see what you're getting. And so I think that measurement has to sit at the heart of what we do as marketers. We have to have something that we can share with them as a measurable. And I think from our side, when I say our, I'm putting as a marketer here, we have to show the C-suite and the business, the stakeholders, that the business relies on innovation, and innovation comes from marketing.
Yeah.
So I think there's somewhere in between where we've got to. I've always been conflicted about awards.
Yes.
You know, I'm embarrassed to say that I went to my first ever Loeries in 2024.
Yeah. Why the conflict?
Because I think it can be seen as chest thumping, as opposed to real deliverable. So I think that I'm a convert now. I'm a convert by Mark, and I'm not just saying that for Pritesh. I really I'm a convert now that creative awards are absolutely essential to position marketing as an innovation, as a point of innovation and differentiation, and that's what brands need. But I think we need to sometimes put a more considered hat on in terms of what are we delivering with our work in terms of proper goals.
Yeah. As someone who's constantly looking for voices that stand out, people who are making waves, what, in your view, makes someone stand out in their industry, in the space that they play?
Yes.
Is it because sometimes there are people who are generally the loudest in an industry? There are people who are some of the quietest, working in the background, doing their work, feeling unnoticed, but actually doing amazing work.
Yes, sir.
And there are people who are somewhere in the middle who get called up to speak at certain places. How do you stand out as someone in your industry, in your space? Because you did it with a Chillibush. You are finding people all the time who are doing it. You are doing it yourself with the Nedbank IMC, right? Like, you're one of those people that a lot of us look to as a great example of someone who's really, really shifting status quo, who's really making,
stop.
who's making all of these waves. Like, how do you stand out as a person in an industry without necessarily being the loudest?
Yeah, that's such a good question. And there's another metaphor from my Chillibush days. And now I'm not criticizing, this has probably changed, but I'm not criticizing anyone who's got a lot of body piercings or tattoos. But I often used to find that the more tattoos and piercings they had was inversely proportional to their talent.
Yeah.
When I was recruiting at Chillibush, I wouldn't look at that as a benefit.
Yeah.
I would go for the quiet dude who would be reading the newspaper in the corner, as opposed to the bells and whistles.
Yeah.
And so I think that's changed now. I mean, everyone and their dog's got a tattoo.
Yeah.
So I think it's the quiet determination. And look, I've been chipping away at this in the industry now for 20 years.
Sure.
So it's a case of chipping away, never compromising your ethics, and then also tapping into the people, Mongezi, to get publicity and exposure, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
No, I mean, a shameless networking. I'm so proud and pleased to be able to call on the industry now for advice and guidance and suggestions. And I think that's essential, is building a reputation so that you can call on the industry for advice and guidance. But to answer your question, again, I feel like I'm waffling there. I think that a quiet determination is something that'll and push back with a business balance is what will get you and working.
Working.
Doing the time.
Work,
I'm afraid
do the work.
There's no getting away from it.
Yeah.
So that's the bottom line.
Yeah.
Work and learn. And I've always had a very delivery type ethic.
Yeah.
What are my clients getting? Are they getting enough? Is it going to be right? And I think that's kind of how we have to look at it.
Absolutely. You've often said you are a basics first marketer.
Yes.
That the foundations don't change.
Yes.
Times might change. There might be new platforms. There might be new things, but the foundations don't change.
Yes.
In your view, what foundations do you think marketers downplay?
Yes.
And what do you think are some of the things that marketers sometimes overestimate and exaggerate instead of focusing on the basics?
Yes, I think that's a great question too. I mean, and I'm always a bit nervous of what terms still apply because I've been in this industry for so long, but things like, for example, the USP.
Yes.
The unique selling proposition. To me, this is a tried and tested formula that should always be applied to every business. And in fact, brand. Yesterday, I had a meeting with the sponsor. And so I was saying to her, right, so she was telling me what her business did. It's a very impressive global business. Yeah. I said, and what do you do differently? And she says, oh, yes, our USP is we outsource project management. So I said, okay, that sounds great. I said, so your competitors don't do that?
Yeah.
She said, yeah, no, they do, but we do it differently. So I kept on drilling her, say, why? How are you different? What is your actual unique quality? So we can get to some real meat. And if you don't have it, it's hard to be different these days. There's a million people offering the same thing. Yeah. So if you don't have an actual differentiator, then choose some distinctive assets or values and really stick to those and promote them. At Chillibush, when I first started, we had nothing. So I decided client service was going to be our thing. Because I'd done some research that said most clients moved agencies not because of creative, because of client service. And I thought, that's an interesting thing to hang my hat on. And so we did. And then slowly you start building your gravitas. Same as the conference. We didn't have being the biggest in the beginning, but we stuck to our assets.
Yeah.
So USP to me is a great one. The other one is the promotional mix. Or the marketing mix.
Yeah.
You probably read it in some books from people like me 30 years ago. But finding the right balance of what activities to use that best promote your product is so hard these days, but it's really important with everything coming at us. There's so much scope and scale these days of what to choose and how to do it that focusing it is really hard. But choosing your promotional mix is critical. For us, for example, it's a combination of our mailer, which we try not to make spam, social media, PR, and so forth. And we try not to, we'll always tinker with new innovative opportunities, but we'll really try and focus on the knitting.
Yeah.
And I think that's what some companies like Takealot and Spotify are starting to do too. They've
For sure.
been inundated with data
Yeah.
And they've decided to cut back on all of that and just stick to the knitting. So I would say the promotional mix is another one that you really need to apply your mind carefully to. Not saying that you shouldn't be experimental, but if you do try something, do it under a measured type of approach.
For sure.
So you can see how it works. And
Yeah.
if it doesn't work, then laugh it off. But be prepared to give it a tonk.
I think this thing that you're talking about now about, I guess, being one, I suppose, being being measured in your approach, but also be serving people who want to kind of be served, and being sort of focusing on them and focusing on what those assets are going to be. There's a lot happening in marketing right now and in the markets, with people faced with so much economic pressure, with things that are changing quite a lot within the marketing space. What do you think brands need to do to stay connected to the people they are serving? Because, to your point, everybody, or at least there are many people doing the thing that you're doing, where it's difficult to find your unique space, your USP in an industry. And sometimes you can decide what the USP becomes and focus solely on that thing. And because there are so many people doing what you are doing, it's hard to kind of stay connected, to stand out. How do you stay connected as a brand to the people that you serve? You mentioned that your newsletter isn't spam, for instance. You focus a lot on the experience. You focus a lot on the quality of the experience. How else can brands and marketers stay connected to the people they are serving, so much so that they're the go-to in that particular space, and that space for that customer?
Yes, I mentioned earlier about listening.
Yeah.
Everything's about listening. That said, we did a survey after the last conference. If I didn't know we were doing it, I'd said I don't want to. Because it's so conflicted. One person says, "Oh, the food was terrible." Another person said the food was great.
Yeah.
So you have to, you can't be swamped by your one person sending you off on a wild goose chase about some negative thing. So I think if you know in your gut what your real assets are, and you're listening to make sure there's no negative sentiment around those assets, so you can stay true to your brand, because those assets are your brand. That's critical. And the way you do it, I know Suhail, because I really enjoyed that interview, he said that he picks up the response to his campaigns on social media.
Yes.
And obviously that's, if you use a company like Ornico, which we do, we're proud to partner with Ornico, they'll measure the sentiment, and you'll know pretty quickly if there's something that is consistently coming across as negative or positive. And so you have to really have your ear to the ground in terms of what's happening out there. But I think if you, like this woman I spoke to yesterday about the sponsorship, who wasn't sure of her own company, her own brand's USP, I think you have to make sure you understand exactly what your brand stands for, so you can be the embodiment of it in everything you do. And then I think the other thing that we all need to remember is that our market isn't just our customer. We've got our internal stakeholders, we've got our colleagues, our staff, our client. And as soon as you start mistreating them or coming across as unfair, or paying lip service to something like youth upliftment, and trying to mislead people with your brand, you're going to get bust, especially with the youngsters out there. You are going to get bust, so don't do it. So I would say try and be ethical. Don't misrepresent what you are doing in the marketplace. You have to be sincere with your offering, but before you do that, you have to actually know what your offering is and why it's different.
Yeah, that's a powerful way of I think thinking about it. In fact, one of the things, I mean, there are many things that we talk about, some of which become buzzwords. Relevance, you mentioned relevance. Relevance is one of them. Authenticity is another one. All of these things. But I think being ethical is what really tells people that you stand for what you say you stand for.
Yeah, I think there's no compromise on ethics here.
Yeah.
And it'll spread like wildfire. I mean, especially in today's age, boy, if you're going to get cancelled, you're going to get cancelled bad.
Yes.
So I think you need to be ethical, but you also need to push back.
Yeah.
You know, you don't want to be bullied into offering something or doing something. For example, I got approached by someone who wanted to do a youth initiative at the conference where 500 youngsters would attend. And, I thought, that's aligns with my thing, but it's going to, no offense to youngsters, it might just dilute my delegate base, and I had to
and
push
the
back.
essence you've built,
The essence I've built, and thank you to Marco again, who came back and said, "Don't do it. That's not right for your brand." So while it ticked off my youth, all my youth mission, it wasn't right commercially. So I had to say no. I'm sorry. And if they came back and said, "Oh, well, so you're just paying lip service to you," I say, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm also a business.
Yeah.
I've got my own youngsters at home.
This is true. So there are a few takes on trends, right? The one take is follow them cautiously and do your thing. The other take is if you follow trends, you're not really creating or changing anything.
Yes.
So besides AI, what other trend has shifted how marketing is and will continue to change the space that marketing plays in?
Gosh. Aside from AI, I don't know if this is a trend, but personally I can't bear it, is when you can't find a person to speak to. You know, and I have gone in circles. Speak to our WhatsApp.
Yes.
You know, they think it's great not to have a person. You can just speak to something. And I have literally gone, and I'm sure everyone listening has experienced this.
There's an e-hailing company that's very famous for that.
Oh, what kind?
An e-hailing company. That's
Yes.
And
can't
talk to anyone there.
You know, the trend to have a chat bot who can answer a million questions at once, or to be referred to a lovely WhatsApp number where they respond immediately. You know, there's also one of our network operators who's even got a name for their chatbot. When I see it, I want to scream. And you can't get a real person. And I know this is something that marketers are battling with, is finding out how much of their communications they can relinquish, where they're not compromising judgment versus delivery. But to my mind, the trend of outsourcing all your communications to the point where there isn't even a telephone number on your website is something that I'm against.
Yeah, the South African CX report pointed to that as well, that when people have a problem, they would much rather speak to a person.
Yes.
So I can come to I would have been using your e-commerce store for the past 10 years, but on the 10th year that I have a problem and my delivery isn't coming to the right place because the pin was wrong on your driver's phone or whatever the case is, I want to speak to a person.
100%.
That's what's coming
we
out.
We all
time
expect
and time
to
again.
be diverted via a chat bot or something to a certain extent, but when it comes to the crunch, you want to be able to say, right, now I want someone who can actually bring me real life ethics, judgment, and understanding, and empathy. Because I've got a crisis, I can't cancel the subscription I've had for 4 years that I've only realized I've been paying now, type of thing. And now I know why, because it's I'll rather pay it. It's easier than cancelling my subscription.
Yeah.
So to me, that's a trend that I personally don't like. I think it's essential, but it has to be tempered with some human reality.
Yeah. We've come to the easy part of the conversation now. I'm going to hit you with some surefire questions and get your response on them. What do you believe most marketers get wrong about building brands that last?
Hype. I think they're too obsessed with the fluffy stuff, as opposed to must say, limit to the word?
It's fine.
Yeah, I think they get caught up in the hype versus the actual the proper delivery and brand value.
Perfect. What's the one principle you've held on to throughout your career that hasn't changed despite everything that has shifted?
I suppose I like to think integrity. I really and fairness. I like to think that. I suppose maybe everyone does, including pretty guys serving prison sentences for whatever. But I like to think that I'm honest to my own gut in terms of what's right and what's wrong.
If you had to strip marketing to its essence, what remains?
The bottom line.
I guess that takes us back to marketing as business.
Exactly.
Right?
In fact, our first conference ever, and this is what Kensani really enjoyed, as our theme was marketing gets naked, stripped down to the bottom line. And I think that's essential. It's all about the bottom line.
Looking ahead, what makes you optimistic about the future of marketing and what concerns you the most?
what makes me optimistic is the youngsters.
Right.
Who I'm involved with now with the conference and our partners like Marsa, and seeing just their sheer delight and enthusiasm and passion about the industry that they come to. I suppose the negative thing is perhaps there's often there's becoming maybe a them and us type of layer in marketing. The very senior ranks are maybe not becoming quite so accessible to everyone.
Yeah, we spoke about that a bit earlier. This being accessible to people.
I'm not sure that there's and also just the superficial. It's maybe that's AI, but the superficial. There's a horrible superficial layer that seems to have come about.
Yeah,
where there's not real depth. In certain things, and I worry about that.
What things specifically do you think about? Because for sure with AI, there's a lot of I suppose with me, I'm seeing a lot of the writing, and I suppose some of the work that's created, even ads, I guess. But what are some of these specific things that, in your view, have lost a bit of the depth that they had?
It's lip service. I've talked about it before. Lip service, people promising things that their brand do when they don't really. Yeah. Offering things that they can't deliver, misleading. Mind you, this has probably been going on forever, but I just find that now it's more prevalent because I think there's so many different layers where it can be imposed. So to try and make it more understandable, I think that we've lost a bit of credibility. Maybe credibility is the word. Yeah. The reason that we seem to be a bit light on credibility often is because people don't understand their brands enough, and they don't make their people understand their brands enough, their teams.
Yeah, that's a very interesting one, and I think the depth and credibility, because the depth part I've also been seeing that there's a lot less depth, that sometimes we kind of create our content for platforms, rather than creating for the brand and the brand essence and the depth. So it's like, how many characters can I write on LinkedIn for people to focus? Do I start with a punchy headline, or do I start with this, right? Like some of the fundamentals that have always been about writing, for instance, about creating content, seem to change in favor of what a platform tells you they should be. Right, like capture the person in the first 3 seconds kind of thing. Capture the imagination. And I think that depth is lost. But how do we bring that depth back when we are being consumed as content creators, as brands on these platforms that say, if a person doesn't get it in the first 5 seconds, they won't read on? How do you then, I think going back to this idea of relevance that we spoke about earlier, the depth and the relevance, side by side. How do you remain relevant in a time when we're creating for platforms, or for our content to be consumed on platforms, while still having the depth and the credit, and I suppose the credibility? I mean, you can't change the credibility, but more so the depth.
Well, I think it goes back to the basics again that I always talk about. You have to work harder
to
understand who you're talking to. And you have to work harder to understand what they are consuming and how they are consuming. Yeah. And you have to make sure that as far as possible, you have put yourself, and I think this is critical, you have put yourself in the place of your consumer and checked it, given it the acid test against what you are seeing.
Yes.
Because without doing that, you will never quite realize what you are putting out there and if it's relevant or not. So you've got to just put yourself in the position of your own consumer to make sure that what you're putting out there is right.
You get it.
So yeah, but it's work. You cannot just feed it into AI and churn out what it spits out. So it's a case of applying yourself, and that's always what differentiates everyone in any industry is how hard you work, how determined you are to succeed, how scientific you are in terms of your goal setting and your objectives, and measuring the outcome of those against what you've set in terms of your own goals. Therein ends the lecture. the sermon.
It's a good one. It's a good one. Dale, we ask our guests to pass the mic to our next guest by leaving a question for them around marketing, creativity, building brands, and everything that we've been talking about. So Nomfundo Ndlangisa, the head of marketing for Stellenbosch Business School, who's in the top 5 IAB's brand representatives, left you a question.
Yes.
And the question she left was, how do we bring back the time to think in marketing? Because in her view, that's what would bring back the core of marketing. Like, we don't have time to think. We are going from one thing to the next.
Yes.
And in her view, sometimes chasing the silver bullets that would win us the audience, win us this, get us there. And we don't stop long enough to think and to come up with this really great insight. How do we bring back that time to think?
I think the only way we can do that is to set up sessions with other people, whether they're youngsters, colleagues, partners. In her case, she's got 1 million students to call on, to have sessions. In the old days, we used to call them. We used to do a lot of those tests before we put out an ad.
Yes.
Focus
groups.
Focus groups.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think if we can find the opportunity, and I'm also a culprit. And for example, we've just taken on an intern, a fantastic designer who also happens to be at Stellenbosch, and I forced myself to set up 1 hour with her every 10 days or so, where everything's, and I force myself to try and share some insights around the industry and impart some of the stuff I've learned along the way. And it's just a case of literally shutting the doors, creating that space, and interacting. I don't think there's any way around it other than doing it like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and it's been wonderful for me because I've had to create this time.
Yes.
Because otherwise, I know she wouldn't be an intern, and I would lose her skills. So I have to do it, and I love it because it just makes me realize I bounce things off her that we're doing, and just to get that feedback from her is just lovely. So yeah,
I think on this, I suppose, one-on-one human insight.
Yes.
I mean, I've been at the Nedbank IMC. I saw how it was on the day. Right, like you are pulled from all sorts of directions, having to talk to media there, having to do this thing there, and you have of course, hugely capable team that delivers on the experience, right?
Yes.
How do you without you being there? I mean, I know that a lot of entrepreneurs have answered this question, but I'd like to get your take on how do you, without being there in person, ensure that the experience from the food to the speaking to that the experience is shared from one person to the next so well that an intern coming in on the day is able to help you deliver on that experience? How do you do that?
I think, again, it's just about communicating. It's about, for example, our intern Katie is spending the time to tell her what our brand values is, to tell her not only what a USP is, but what our USP is, and to try and make as much time as possible to spend with my colleagues, and so they catch on to the culture. So there's no getting away from that other than imparting in whatever way you can through communication and example what your brand stands for. Obviously, it's the old catch-22. There comes a time when you have to start relinquishing certain things. But all you can do is try and put the bedrock in place in terms of communication and sharing to your colleagues and the people who implement your product.
Yeah. Dale, now it's your turn to pass the mic to our next guest.
Okay.
So what would you like to ask our next guest about their creative process, marketing, building brands, or anything to do with, I suppose, the creative industry?
Okay. I guess based on all our going on around AI and what have you, I suppose one question is to ask that person, what would be the one skill or the one thing that they cannot delegate to AI? What would be the one thing within their marketing department or their team that they feel is too critical to delegate to AI?
Interesting question, Dale. Thank you so much for all the
no,
insights.
man, is it ended? Thank you, Mongezi.
Thank you for sharing.
As ever, looking forward to working
amazing
with you at the conference again.
Yeah, I look forward to that. That's exciting. It was great doing it last year. And appreciate all the insights. And I think one of the many things that I get out of that is, I suppose, relevance, and relevance in very many ways. Relevance to the community you're serving, relevance to your cause and your USP, and I guess sticking to your guns. I think that's one of the things that we find hardest to do. Yes. How do I say this is the journey we are taking and stick to it despite whatever's shifting, without compromise, yes. without seeing the next shiny thing and following it. So thank you so much. I appreciate making the time.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you. And thank you for watching The Lead Creative. If you haven't subscribed, please hit subscribe below. And as I said earlier, we're coming to you from Solemix Studios. And if you come here for your first project, tell them we sent you. You get 30% off. Stay curious.